showed, a few people showed up. So just be aware of that. Let's see. Next up on my list is a request. I would like you to gather up whatever spirituality you come from, whatever faith you follow, whatever perception of the universe's energy, and offer a moment of silence on behalf of those people that have been killed recently, all the way from my friends at the Garlic Festival in Gilroy, where I grew up near there, and our friends in Texas and Ohio. So if we'll take a moment of silence as we appreciate that. Thank you. So, one of the things that we use as a theme, and actually has been used by others, is this notion that we are stronger together. And I invite you to take a moment and just introduce yourself to some of the people around you so we are truly together. Please do that. And I can assure you that we are all fine people here. It's the next slide. And while I have let me tell you just a little bit about Indivisible. I have you picture after this candidate is being rounded up as we speak. So, Indivisible was formed following the election of Mr. Trump, and it was formed for the specific purpose of resisting the Trump agenda. We are nonpartisan, we are nonprofit, we are locally run completely with volunteers, but we're clear about we're an issues-oriented organization. So, like whatever candidate you want, we're going to focus on the issues. And our greatest gift to you is to try to make sure those positions of all the candidates that you're going to have choices from, that you know what their positions are on issues that are important to you. There are over 6,000 Indivisible chapters in the United States at this moment. So we are part of that larger group. Our local chapter here has chosen to sponsor town halls. Now we do this not as an endorsement for the candidates that we invite, but as a specific opportunity to address issues that are important to us as Indivisible. Two of those issues are the climate crisis and workers' rights. And that explains the reason that we have reached out to the Inslee campaign to invite the governor to join us, because it just so happens he has been very outspoken about those issues and has experience in actually bringing them into legislation and making it happen in his state. So that gives you a little background. It also explains why we have reached out, and I want to introduce our co-host for this evening, another organization, the Climate Reality Project. This is Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, and with us is the leader of that organization, Christiane Brown. I understand not only is a great candidate for being a good friend of yours, but this organization's getting cranked up in our midst, and if you want to know more about it, please contact her, let her know, and she'll be sure to invite you. So, go ahead.
So the Climate Reality Project started with just 50 people, and Al Gore trained them personally to do that climate presentation that you've all seen, the Inconvenient Truth and Inconvenient Sequel. There are now 22,000 of us worldwide. And we put on that presentation, and we try to spread the word about climate. We also work to advocate for climate solutions and awareness, and we work together with the other climate and environmental groups here for environmental justice, for doing the right thing, and for saving our planet. So that's all happening now, and you'll hear more about it coming soon. We're going to be having a Climate Reality Town Hall, hopefully with Governor Inslee coming up soon too, so we'll let you know about that. Thank you.
I'm quite sure it's not a surprise to you that Governor Inslee actually met with our Northern Nevada leaders in the whole environmental community, and we're glad for him to have done that, as well as he met with members of Action, who are involved in organizing Northern Nevada for social justice purposes. So, let me tell you what's going to happen tonight. The governor's probably going to have about 10 to 15 minutes worth of words, at which time we will turn it over for questions and answers. We're going to do this by raising hands. Christiane's going to have the mobile mic, and we'll come to you in the order that's closest to her, or whatever. And I want to ask a favor. All of us are budding presidential candidates ourselves, and in this day and age, we've all got a lot to say, don't we? And I really appreciate that. But since our time is so precious, I ask you to focus on a question. And there'll be lots of opportunities for statements later, I suspect. So please focus on the question. So I will do something now, and I'll repeat at the end. Is that your chapter here of Indivisible in Northern Nevada actually has a monthly meeting. I think we're taking a break for August, right? So next one will be in September. But we have a website, we have a Facebook page. We're very active. This is probably one of the most effective political organizations that's not associated with a party in Northern Nevada. And we have cards to fill out, little cards with the address of the website. And so, if you want those, I invite you to do that. If you did not have a chance to sign in, please leave us your information afterwards. We will use this to send you the newsletter, and you always have the option to opt out. So, at least give you a chance to know what we're up to. Okay, any questions about that? Oh, so, Q&A period, followed by, we're going to hand the governor over to the press for a press gaggle. Whatever's left is going to come back and take pictures with us. So if you'd like to stick around and have your pictures taken with the governor, wait till after the press is done, and we'll do that from people's plan. Okay. Any further questions? I don't see that he's here yet. Probably around the corner, so I'm going to step away for a moment and say hi to your new friends.
Subject. I'm also a co-president of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence in Northern Nevada, and this is the time, people, every time there's a mass shooting, our legislators receive 10-to-1 letters from the NRA telling them that they want their freedoms protected, that they don't want their guns taken away. Now is the time to write to your legislators. Now is the time to demand action. We want to change that. We want to let them know that there are more people than that small little percentage of a hating group out there. We want them to know that we're here and we have had enough. So this is the time. You can go to our Brady site. We are a Northern Nevada chapter of Brady United Northern Nevada. You can go to Moms Demand Action. You can go to Indivisible here and their gun safety. Any of those areas will direct you to how to get in touch with your legislators now, because this is the time. This is important. Thank you.
Chance to express himself on that topic. Enough is enough. 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 So tell your politicians that. How else? So it's my pleasure now to introduce our featured guest tonight, a champion for the climate, a champion for workers' rights, Governor Jay Inslee.
Thank you. I want to thank Indivisible. I'm going to make some comments tonight. I'm not going to hold back because I've got things in my heart tonight I want to share with you. First, I want to thank Indivisible for expressing what we are and what we should be, which is indivisible in the United States of America. This is a country that ought to embrace diversity as a strength rather than a weakness. ought to embrace this as a place where immigration has built the United States and will continue to do so. It's a place that ought to have compassion and humanity for all of our neighbors. That's what we are. We ought to be indivisible. And right now, I said something in Detroit that I firmly believe. We need to remove a white nationalist from the White House. This is a man whose entire political foundation has been built on the ugliness of racism and division. He started his career lying about Barack Obama, if you'll recall, saying he was born in Kenya. He continued by saying people in Charlottesville that there were good people on both sides. He has allowed in multiple of his public events when people have incited violence for him to give complicity to that by remaining silent. Every single chance he has had, instead of united us, he has divided us and incited this type of violence. Now today or yesterday, I heard he said he's now against hatred. Well, Donald Trump saying he's against hatred is like pen and tongue. It's time for us to stand up and make him what he deserves to be, which is a blip in history, and I'm committed to that. And I appreciate Indivisible standing up for that central promise. Look, we need to understand that fear is a powerful and dangerous force, and he is using it for political purposes. And it is not only the inherent racism that flame which he has fanned, but he has allowed and stood by while the NRA exposed us and our children to violence. Now, I feel very strongly about this, and I'll tell you why. And my wife and I have been very active in this issue of gun violence for quite a while. In 1994, I was a freshman member of the U.S. Congress from Yakima, Washington, where Trudy and I raised our 3 boys. And it really reminds me of the Reno-era community. This just looks like the community where I raised my 3 kids and practiced lawn and raised alfalfa. And a bill came up. I was in about a 65% Republican district, and a bill came up to ban assault weapons. And I knew that if I voted to ban assault weapons, I would lose my seat in Congress. But I voted to ban assault weapons. I did lose my seat in Congress, but I want to tell you, I have never regretted that vote for one heartbeat. It was the right vote then, it is the right vote now, and now I want to tell you the state of Washington has passed 3 major gun safety legislation. We are not done. We have the NRA on the run in Washington state, and if I'm given this honor to be president, we're going to have the NRA on the run all across America. So now we are looking for a candidate to remove white nationalism and NRA fandom from the White House. And I think I qualify to do both of those things. And I want to thank you for what Indivisible is doing all across the United States, because you have invigorated people, you have given people an outlet, you've given them a place to plug into this effort. And I think we are allied in some major causes. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the climate crisis. And it is a crisis tonight. But before I do that, because if you've heard my name, it's probably in association with defeating the climate crisis. But I want to let you know that we've done some other good things that I would like to extend to the United States. I've been a governor now for 6.5 years. I've been very successful. We have created the best economy in the United States. And this is important. Business Insider magazine said it was the best place to do business, and Oxfam said it was the best place to work. It has the highest GDP growth and the highest wage growth in the United States. Now here's why I note this, not just to sort of brag on our accomplishment. Donald Trump's basic idea is that trickle-down economics will save us all. If we just shower billionaires with tax benefits, some of that will trickle down to us. And that if you take care of working people, and if you pay good wages, and if you embrace diversity, that will give you a lousy economy. Let me share with you what we've been able to accomplish in Washington since I've been governor. We have achieved the highest minimum wage in the United States. We have achieved the richest, most robust family and medical leave in the United States. We have achieved, and I'm very proud of this as a son of a biology teacher, the highest increase in educator compensation in the United States, 31% increase in state. I have signed the very first net neutrality bill protecting our access to the internet, freedom of in the United States. We are radical in the state of Washington. I have to plead guilty to that. We think women should get paid the same as men. And so we have passed the best gender pay equity laws in the United States, so the boss can't get away with paying women less than they do for the men. We have embraced efforts to end the terrible racial disparity that has so infected our nation. And I'm proud to say that I was one of the first governors to address the racial disparity in our criminal justice system by offering pardons to thousands of people who've been caught up in the drug wars. We have eliminated the death penalty. And something that I feel very proud about, when Donald Trump has tried to effectuate his latent and consistent racism, we have stood tall. And I'm proud to be here tonight telling you I was the first governor of the United States to stand up against his Muslim ban. And I'm proud of that because we have to confront him. He needs to be confronted on his racism every chance we get. I was the first governor to say we should accept Syrian refugees because I believe this is a place of refuge in the United States. And the reason is that I feel so profoundly about the basic character of America. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and a place of refuge where we can bring in a more dynamic economy and culture. And we're experiencing that right here in Nevada with this dynamic Latino culture in Nevada that has made who we are. Black folks who are leading various communities. This is a dynamic strength of America, and it is the reason we have always led over the last 2 centuries, both economically and culturally, because we are continually refreshing this country with new languages, new face, new colors. This is what's made America what it is. And Donald Trump, frankly, simply does not understand that. So I have been very vigilant and diligent. And by the way, of all the things I'm proudest of, maybe the thing I'm proudest of is that we have sued him now and beat him 21 times. For those of us who share progressive values, I think it would be a dandy thing to have a Western governor on a debate stage telling Donald Trump why he is wrong in all these ways. And that if you will simply embrace progressive values, you will have the best economy in the United States. And that's the state of Washington. And I want to share the fruits of these progressive values with everyone in America. But I do know this. Unless we defeat the climate crisis, all of these benefits we've been able to achieve in Washington may be, in a sense, moot. Because if we have such a degraded place to live, where we do not have clean air to breathe, where we do not have water to drink, where we do not have forests that are not on fire, where we do not have farms that aren't flooded, where we do not have coastlines that have not been inundated, all the other things that we believe in will be moot. The central value that we have to now stand up for is the capability of our grandchildren to have a place to live. And I just got to share with you the most personal thing of why I'm running for president. I love my state. I know people love Nevada. These are 2 beautiful states in their own ways. I grew up fishing. I grew up skiing. I grew up swimming. I grew up hiking in the forest. And I know that all of the things that I've enjoyed, my 3 grandchildren will not have during their lifetime unless we stop the climate crisis. So a few months ago, I made a decision. Trudy and I made a decision. We decided that on our last days on Earth, we wanted to be able to look at our 3 grandchildren, Brody, Chase, and Zoe, and tell them we did everything humanly possible to save them from the climate crisis. So I'm running for President of the United States. And if I'm given this honor, I will make defeating the climate crisis the #1 priority of the United States of America. And we will defeat the climate crisis. So this is it's like everything else you do that's big in life. It's very personal for my wife and myself, and it's personal for everybody here. Now, we know why this is a moment, this is a tipping point in the United States. It is a tipping point scientifically, and it should be a tipping point electorally. It is a tipping point scientifically because the scientific community has told us that we've only got 10 or 12 years, and after that it will simply be too late. These timelines are not established by members of Congress, or mayors, or even presidents. They are established by the laws of physics, by the laws of thermodynamics. Those are the laws that dictate how fast we have to go. And those are the laws we now are seeing played out. Look, I co-authored a book 12 years ago about this subject, about how to build a clean energy economy. And 12 years ago, this threat was just a line on a graph. You know, I'd go around the country showing how parts per million of carbon dioxide is going up. It was an abstraction. People didn't really could see what is happening. But look what's happening now. I walked through the ruins of Paradise, California, a town of 25,000 burned to the ground. I talked to Marcia Moss, who had her mobile home was just this little pile of molten aluminum, and she lost everything. She said, I want to show you, Governor, the only thing I own that I have left is my driveway. Everything else is gone. It's the farmers in the Midwest who've lost billions of dollars, some of it from Trump's misbegotten trade war, and then the floods came through and wiped them out. It's the communities in Miami. The day we landed in Miami was the hottest day in the history on that date in Miami, and 40,000 acres of the Everglades was on fire. When your swamps are on fire in America, we know we have a problem. And that is why Americans are now ready and eager and demanding a solution, which they are not getting from Donald Trump or the Republican Party. So I believe this is a tipping point, both scientifically and electorally. So I believe what we want is what we had in the 60s when John F. Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon. And by the way, he didn't say we're going to go halfway to the moon. He said we're going to go all the way to the moon. So what I'm saying, and I'm staking my candidacy on this, we're not going to go halfway to defeat climate change. We're not going to save half our grandchildren. We're going to have a full-blooded, full mobilization of the United States economy, embracing the full innovative talents of this country, and we are going to build a clean energy economy that defeats climate change. I'm staking my candidacy. When I say full-blooded, and when I say full mobilization, I mean that. Because there are some other candidates in the race, in fact, all the candidates, they all are way better than Donald Trump, because all our Democrats have said climate change is a problem. That's 10,000 points better than Donald Trump, right there, okay? But we have to have a plan that will actually meet the scientifically rigorous goals of what we have to do. We have to get off coal in 10 years. We have to start having the auto industry give us clean cars in 10 years. We have to eliminate fossil fuels from our electrical grid in 15 years. These are scientifically certain goals. So I have proposed a plan to do all of those things and put 8 million people to work while we do that. And when I say 8 million people, there is something important to realize about that. When we put 8 million people to work, we want to make sure there are union jobs that pay good wages. So we have embedded what I call environmental justice throughout my plan. Now, my plan is the most scientifically rigorous. It's been called the gold standard by Representative Ocasio-Cortez. It has been evaluated as the best by Greenpeace. It has been evaluated as the best by Data for Progress. It's been evaluated as the best by the SEAL organization. And the reason is, it's the best. And the reason is, it's the best, is it's the most comprehensive and robust. But it is also the best because it commits to embodying ideas of justice as well as survival. We've had 250 years of racial injustice in this country. And I believe at the same time we can save ourselves from the climate crisis, we can do a lot of things to embrace equity. That's why in my plan, I have in many, many different ways tried to attack the racial disparity that has been endemic in this country. One of which is to target a lot of our infrastructure dollars into the frontline communities, the communities of poverty and color and indigenous communities. We've targeted 40% for those communities. We've created what I call an equity screen, meaning we screen the decisions we make to see what reaction or result they have from an equity standpoint. And we've made sure that the jobs we create are good paying jobs. So we have embodied the idea of environmental justice, and I'm very proud of this, because I think this is a twofer. We can save ourselves from the climate crisis. At the same time, we remediate the economic and racial injustice that we know we have to do, and I'm glad to be a party that really cares about this. So we're off to the races. I'm proud of the work we're doing. I'm proud of the fights we're in together. We've had a big boost since the second debate because I finally got a chance to talk about the climate crisis. We've had almost 20,000 new donors since the debate, and I'm very happy about that. By the way, anybody here, you have the constitutional right to go to jnz.com and send in $1. And that's important because we just topped the 110,000 donors, but I got to get to 130 to make sure we're on the next debate stage. So if anybody can help on that regard, any of your friends and relatives and cousins, that would be awesome if you could help us. We got to keep this climate debate going big time, and I hope you recognize that I have been the most vigorous on this. And this is not a new thing for me. I mentioned I co-authored a book 12 years ago. I introduced some of the first legislation in the early 2000s, called the Apollo Energy Project. I helped establish the U.S. Climate Alliance with Jerry Brown and Andrew Cuomo, and that was important. We now have 24 states that are committed to fighting climate change, and we established that because we wanted to show the rest of the world that there was still intelligent life in the United States. And it's been very successful. The rest of the world keeps moving forward so that we can win this battle. So we're excited. I like to think we put the Mo in Motown, and we got some big Mo right now, so things are going well. And here I am meeting a great group. By the way, this is a tremendous group to come out tonight to meet with. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I've had some good meetings. I met with some folks in the homeless effort to end homelessness in Nevada. We know we have real challenges in Nevada. I got some great ideas. I met with the environmental community earlier this afternoon. I've got some really great ideas. So I want to thank you for being here. And I'm looking for some easy questions or softball criticisms. If we can take some, Chip, is that possible tonight? I would love to hear some softball questions here. Good ideas. Yes. Okay. Okay. I hope somebody's going to ask about healthcare too, which I haven't talked about tonight. So I hope that you will ask me a question about that.
Governor Inslee, I'm an ex-Washingtonian, so
We'll try to get you back.
yes. I have a question. Mr. Yang, in one of his responses at the last debate, implied geoengineering as a solution. I'm a little nervous about that. Do you have any thoughts? Is that part of your plan?
Well, the question about geoengineering, it depends what you mean. I do think there's things we can do to enhance sequestration of carbon in our natural systems. I just met this in San Francisco this morning. A scientist from Berkeley who is studying the way to sequester carbon in topsoil. and using manure management actually in our dairies and our farms. And there is a way to sequester and have better productivity in our farms and actually have a revenue source for farmers. That is happening in California today. That kind of idea makes sense. I think sequestering carbon in trees could make sense to get the carbon out of the atmosphere and into wood fiber. But I got to tell you, things like spreading sulfur into the atmosphere, and we have no clue how these systems could possibly work. And I just believe that we ought to focus on eliminating fossil fuel. That is the thing we ought to focus on. I really, really do believe that. Mr. Yang also is an interesting fellow, very successful business guy, but he made this comment about, we just need to head for the hills. And he has this idea of giving everybody $1,000 a month. But that's not going to be a solution if you have to use that $1,000 for U-Haul to try to move up to Mount Everest, where all the billionaires are going to live. The billionaires are going to buy all the property at the top of the mountains, and it's not a solution. We have to defeat the climate crisis. We have to eliminate carbon dioxide, and that means breaking the hold of the fossil fuel special interests on Congress. We've got to take away their $20 billion of subsidies. We're going to have campaign finance reform and voting rights so that we can break the shackles of the fossil fuel industry.
Governor, hello. I'm concerned about the defense budget, and our weapons of war also include others. And I would like to have some of that budget back to fight climate change. And I wonder what your proposal is to handle the excessive defense budget.
First, fight back against presidents who start unnecessary wars, and that's why I'm telling you I was one of the very first and most vocal advocate against the Iraq War. I understood it was going to be a looming disaster. Too many of my colleagues sort of yielded to the beating war drums of George Bush because he created passions about that. And I was willing to stand up against that idea, and I'm glad I did, and I'm sorry about the tragedy that unfolded. And we need people who are willing to stand up for their convictions, and I'm that kind of politician. I stood up against George Bush in the Iraq War. I stood up against repeal of Glass-Steagall. I stood up against bankruptcy reform in the financial industry. I stood up against the NRA. I'm a stand-up kind of guy. So standing up against those beating war drums is something that's number one. Number two, I believe that we have to remove our troops from Afghanistan because I believe that the time has come to achieve. I think that we have to re-engage Congress in its constitutional authority for the war-making powers. And that means no more open-ended authorizations for all time. Congress has to get up on its hind legs and establish its constitutional obligations, particularly in this Afghanistan war situation. I believe that we should, when we have good agreements that are binding, that are being enforced, and are accomplishing their ends, which the Iran deal was to prevent them from obtaining fissionable material, it is ludicrous to have a president who wants, by tweet, a press conference, who tore up a perfectly good agreement, and now is one mistake away from a shooting war in the Mideast again. I believe we should go back and basically enforce the fundamental terms to prevent Iran from having fissionable materials, and that means getting rid of Donald Trump. So that's what my policies would be in a heartbeat. Look, his whole theory is, for him to win, somebody else has to lose. As a result, he has destroyed virtually every alliance we've ever had. In the Paris Agreement, in threatening NATO, in the Iran Agreement, he has debilitated our ability to put pressure on North Korea because nobody else will work with him because it's torn up every relationship we have. We have to protect our national security, and the best place to do that is to understand the power of alliances. We need a president to do that. Now, the defense budget, I want to talk about the defense budget as it relates to climate change. We can use the defense budget as a positive tool to build clean energy technologies in this country. We have enormous procurement power, and we got to use the defense budget to now start buying clean sources of energy for our ships and our planes rather than tearing up that effort. Ray Mabus, the last Secretary of the Navy, he started powering Navy ships on biofuels and building solar power. So we didn't have to have gasoline trucks exposed to IEDs. And that's the kind of approach we got to do, and I believe we can do it.
Thank you for coming, Governor Inslee. I have a two-part question. I've been asking other candidates the same thing. So, except for this. About 10 days ago, Trump appointed a gentleman who does not believe in public lands to be in charge of public lands.
What a shock.
Is there something that you want to do to protect public lands? Because Nevada is 80% public lands. That's my first question. My second question is, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about won't matter if we don't have the judiciary. And apparently, 1 in 4 circuit court judges, I believe it is, Trump has appointed. It's the one thing he's been successful at. And I think it's 1 in 10 or 11 of district court judges. And we have, Mr. I Like Beer as a new justice. Is there something that we can do to make sure that Mr. I Like Beer is investigated when a new administration comes in? Because apparently he had hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt just disappear right before his confirmation.
I actually don't know about this situation, but we would do whatever is appropriate in that regard. I do have to express a little dissatisfaction with some of our Democratic senators who have not been sufficiently critical about these nominations. And when they decided to go on a recess, and in order to do that, give Mitch McConnell what he wanted, that did not sit well with me. These are lifetime appointments. We need to be more critical in this regard. So you know that I can be appropriately protected of the constitutional right of women's right of choice, both in my judicial nominees, but not just our judicial nominees. Congress can pass laws to protect a woman's right of choice. We don't have to depend solely on the judicial system. Congress can pass laws to protect a woman's right of choice. In my state, we have passed the Reproductive Parity Act, which makes sure that women get access to insurance coverage for their reproductive health care. Because reproductive health care is health care. So that law needs to be national, and I would fight to get it national. We need to take this to those who want to deprive a woman's her right of choice in Congress as well as in the judicial system. Now there's another thing we need to do where I part company with almost all of my opponents. We believe, as Democrats, and I believe Indivisible, in progress. And progress means you got to pass things through the U.S. Senate. There is something that will block almost every single piece of progress in the U.S. Senate, even if we pick up 2 or 3 seats. And that's the filibuster. Mitch McConnell has called himself the Grim Reaper. The filibuster is a sharp blade. We need climate change legislation. We need gun safety legislation. We need health care legislation. We need voting rights legislation. And to get any of those, if I'm elected president, I'm going to do everything humanly possible to take away the filibuster from Mitch McConnell. This is extremely important. I got to express disappointment. There's only one of the senators who are running for our nomination who agrees with me on that. That's Elizabeth Warren. I'm disappointed with those other senators. This is an antediluvian, antiquated, non-democratic vestige of the spittoon era. And if we are ever going to make progress again, we have to eliminate it. Do you think Mitch McConnell is going to let a major climate change bill get through if he's still got the filibuster? I frankly don't know how you consider yourself serious about saving this planet from climate change unless you're willing to stand up against the filibuster. So I hope you'll help me make sure that we change.
Hello. Hi. I'm a teacher, educator, and a professor here, so I'm really impressed with what you did in Washington, raising teacher salaries more than 30%.
Hold on just a second. We increased the state commitment to compensation. Teachers only ended up getting about a 12% increase, but it was big.
Still, that's big. Yeah, here we're fighting for 3. So, what I was wondering is, what would be your policy for teacher compensation, educator, professional compensation in the United States? Because that's another crisis that I think kind of ties in with the climate crisis, that we're under-resourced at schools.
So I think the best thing the federal government can do is to provide additional resources for the public school system. I'm a huge advocate for the public school system. That, any way you do that, in some way, assuming we allow collective bargaining, which we should, and we need to get rid of all the right to work laws. When you provide additional resources, it allows money to be negotiated for better compensation. Now, the places we can do that are most important in my book are additional funds for special education for a public school system.
Yes.
This is very close to my heart. I was a special ed student as a child and a grandchild, and I know that how transformative this is. I believe we have to do things to decrease racial disparity still in our public education system. I think we have to do things to encourage earlier education in all its vestiges. I believe we need a universal early child education, and I believe this for 25 years. So federal involvement and federal funding on that is extremely important. I believe ultimately we're going to need to go to more education in addition to better education. That means more time for kids who need it. And we're seeing incredible success by providing kids who have special challenges another hour or 2 during the day. We've increased graduations dramatically by being able to do that, which means more compensation for teachers as well. And by the way, I try to train myself not to say teachers, it's educators. It's counselors and librarians and bus drivers and cooks and custodial engineers. All of these folks need to get better pay, and I'm committed to that. Thank you.
I have a question about climate. In our efforts to fight climate change, how do you as president help developing countries break away from those two-stroke scooters that so many millions and millions of people use today to get around?
Yeah, well, first off, our international efforts are extremely important because we know we all have to solve this problem internationally. No one country can solve it. And I believe to begin with, we have to embed climate into all of our foreign policy. We can't have it sort of segregated in a stovepipe. So anytime we're talking about with another nation on any subject, it has to have climate as part of that discussion. We need to ramp up our commitment internationally to solve this problem. And we haven't done that. So that's number one. Number two, we have to realize, and I'm going to riff a little bit, it's not just scooters, it's coal-fired electrical grid systems. And we have a major challenge right now because China is doing some really good things domestically to wean themselves off of coal. And the reason they're doing that is simply for health, for breathing reasons. You can't breathe. And the Communist Party understands this is a major threat to their control politically. They know they have to give people breathable air, or they're going to be out at some point. So China is actually doing some fairly good things to eliminate their use of coal. However, they're financing coal-fired plants around the developing world. So we have to engage China to redirect that investment to clean energy sources, including cleaner sources of transportation. And when we do that, we want to sell these systems to the world. I want UAW members who built my electric car in Orion, Michigan, to start building cleaner electric scooters to sell around the world. And that technology is now available. It has come down in price dramatically. We have 50,000 electric cars on the road in Washington today. We've done that because of an incentive package to help people finance it, and because we built electric charging stations. But frankly, that won't be enough. We simply have to do what we did in the 70s. Look, in the 70s, we couldn't see Mount Rainier from the University of Washington campus because of nitrous oxide. You know what we did? Uncle Sam got involved. Uncle Sam said, auto industry, you need to start making cleaner cars. And they did. And now you can see Mount Rainier, at least until the forest fire started burning down. Now we need Uncle Sam to tell the auto industry, do what you did in World War II. In World War II, in 1940, the auto industry produced 70 Jeeps, 7-0. Then Uncle Sam gave a new work order to the auto industry, and by 1945, they had produced 645,000 Jeeps. We need to give a new work order to our auto industry, start making cleaner cars 10 years from now. They're going to do it because we have brilliant UAW members, and we got Uncle Sam, and we just might have a president to make this happen. So that's what we're doing.
Hi, Governor Inslee. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing what you're doing. I'm aiming this way. So I think that a lot of the people who don't want to do much in terms of climate change, I don't think they're inherently evil. I don't think that they want the earth to burn to a crisp. I think that they're maybe ignorant. I think they don't know. So what do you plan on doing to educate everyone about this?
Make Donald Trump a blip in history. That's what I intend on doing. I'm serious about this. Look, to some degree, these are folks who are being lied to by the President of the United States. That's pretty powerful. When you have the President of the United States telling you something, there's a tendency throughout history, frankly, none of our presidents have lied to the American people like this guy has. And so it shouldn't be shocking to some degree that people are going to be fooled by that. I mean, would a president lie? Dwight Eisenhower didn't lie to us every single day. Teddy Roosevelt didn't lie to us every single day. Abraham Lincoln certainly didn't do it. It's not necessarily their fault. And they're listening to this 24 hours a day. So they're being lied to. Now, how do you deal with that? You do it one person at a time and one day at a time. I was going to go on Fox News 2 mornings ago. I got up at 4:15, and I intended to say what I believed, which we had to remove a white nationalist from the White House. But I also intended to share a little science with folks who were listening to Fox that they had not been exposed to. That's our job. We got an obligation to do it. But listen, I believe this is one of the best ways to beat Donald Trump. And I believe the 2 strongest messages are this. I believe in beating Republicans by having contrast with them. I beat a lot of Republicans in my day, including in very Republican districts, by having contrast. And you want to have contrast on their weakest point and our strongest point. What is Donald Trump's weakest point? What is the thing that people know that he's wrong about the most? The climate crisis and the environment. And here's how we know this. Donald Trump told us something the other day. He went out and said, I'm an environmentalist. I'm the best environmentalist president in American history. Why would anybody be so stupid to say that? It's because he understands he's in trouble on this. He's hemorrhaging voters on this. His approval rating is like 29% on this issue. This is his weakest link. It is his weak point in his armor. So we, in my book, ought to have the strongest candidate on this subject to attack his weakest point, where he has the least number of people who think he's done a decent job. That's number 1. Number 2 is this issue of economy. And that is what produces a great economy. He thinks it produces a great economy to give billionaires tax relief. We believe it's giving people a raise finally after 30 years. And my state is the perfect example demonstrating why we're right. So I think those are 2 pretty strong ways to go after that. Now I want a piece of, I shouldn't say that. That would be mean-spirited. But I feel very comfortable in a personal confrontation with him because I believe he needs to be confronted personally. I'll give you an example. Last year after the Parkland shootings, we went to, the governors went to meet him at the White House. And his solution to violence was, we'll just give first grade teachers Glock pistols to wear. That was his solution. And my fellow governors were toting up to him and genuflecting, I wanted an air sickness bag. And so I decided to confront him, which I did. And I said, this is a ludicrous idea, it's just nutty. Teachers know that's a dumb idea. And he sat there to get this old pout, he just starts rocking like this, I didn't have any response. And I just finished by looking him in the eye and says, you need to stop tweeting so much and start listening to educators. That's what he did. I will relish that confrontation.
Thank you, Governor, for being here. I looked into putting solar panels on my house, and it's estimated it cost $25,000. Decided I couldn't afford that right now, so I called the power company and said, I'd rather pay you $10,000 to buy some solar panels, put them in the desert, let everybody access it. They haven't called me back, but I'm wondering if there are any programs like that where consumers can pool their money to create solar farms that generate clean energy.
The answer is yes. I'm actually a participant. So in our state, we have green power. So you can basically play utilities, and so they'll make an investment in clean energy. So there are ways to do that. It is part of the thing that I think we should do federally. We also need to have new ways, basically, to help homeowners finance this. So feed-in tariffs, PACE bonding is a way to bond this, and use it through your revenue collection through municipal usage. These things, clean energy, very, very frequently ends up saving consumers massive amounts of money over a couple decades. It's just a matter of getting the capital costs. So we've created, and I've proposed numerous ways to help consumers basically get the capital costs. So then you have not only zero utility bills, but you get paid by the utility because your meter's running backwards. And we have to have laws to make sure utilities are partners with consumers so that you get paid when that meter does run backwards. And that's the central key to this. And by the way, I'm very bullish on this. It's the one thing I got wrong in the book I co-authored 12 years ago, in that the price of solar has actually come down a lot faster than we predicted. It has come down 80% in 10 years and is continuing to come down because of new technologies. I went to the ribbon cutting for the largest photovoltaic manufacturer in North America about 3 weeks ago in Bellingham, Washington. They have a whole new way of manufacturing a solar cell, which reduces the kind of connections you have to make on the back of the cell. It's going to reduce the cost. So, good news here.
Governor Inslee, so glad to have you here. And my question is, you mentioned grandchildren, which is good. I have a few myself. And they're going to inherit the earth that we make. So I know in Washington there are a group of juveniles that have started a lawsuit against the federal government to improve our climate on the basis of the public trust doctrine. Are you following that, and what encouragement are you giving to those juveniles?
Well, first off, let me just talk about that generation. It has been so inspirational. I've got to know young leaders across the country. The Sunrise Movement, the Climate Strikers movement. I've sat on the park bench in front of the United Nations with a 14-year-old. In fact, it was her 14th birthday. Alexandria Villaseñor, who's leading the climate strike movement. There's going to be a national, in fact, international climate strike here, I believe it's in September. Greta Thunberg is sailing from Sweden to help lead that. And if she doesn't win the Nobel Prize, then something's wrong. I have been personally inspired by these folks. I've participated with them as many chances as I can. But it shouldn't take the judicial system to do this. Elected leaders ought to do this without a judicial decree against them. And I couldn't be terribly optimistic about this U.S. Supreme Court. So we need to win the presidency, and I'm committed to doing that. And I think you know how intensely I feel about this. And I was really committed to this when I started this to my 3 grandchildren, but now I found out, since I got into this race, I got another one on the way in November, so I'm really committed to this. Well, one thing is we're going to have comprehensive immigration reform so people can actually work here and not have to be afraid of, being deported who want to do good work. Second, we need what we have in Washington State. We have a program called Career Connected Learning, and it's a massive expansion of our apprenticeship programs. And I feel very strongly about this because I think we've made a mistake for a while telling our children if you don't get a college degree, you're a failure in life. That's just wrong. These are great careers. My son's a carpenter. He's built houses for 20 years, now he's building docks. These are good, honest, should be family-raised jobs. So the training program, Switzerland, 70% of the 18, 19, 20-year-olds in Switzerland are in apprenticeship programs. As a result, they have almost no unemployment for that age group. And I think that's a model we got to try to replicate. So that training is very, very important. Now, when they do get those jobs, they got to have the right to have a union so they can have decent wages. We know unions have been under attack. We know it's a fundamental reason why wages have not gone up. And what gets my goat is that working people have produced more work, more productivity every hour, every single year for the last 2 or 3 decades. But every single nickel of that productivity increase has gone to the top X%. We don't reverse that. People ought to be able to participate in their own great productivity. So I'm committed to this. Yeah. And if I want a dock built on any of the fine lakes in Nevada, call my son.
I've got one over here and then I'm going to go across. Trying to avoid that feedback.
Hello, Governor Inslee, Lynn Barker from Seattle, and I was very proud to have voted for you many times. So Washington and Seattle are a wealthy state, a wealthy city, lots of resources. In the state of Nevada, local government is not, wealthy. Our revenues, because of our tax structure, barely or don't actually cover basic services. And as the sustainability manager, we just passed our first climate action plan in the history of the city. Back in the day, cities were able to take advantage of lots of grant opportunities through the federal government, through the EPA, DOE, U.S. Department of Agriculture. What are you going to do to reinstate investment in cities to help us solve the program on a lot of these problems on the ground, because we are at the front lines?
Well, in our plan, which it's only about 220 pages long, so I hope you'll read it, but a substantial tenet is that these investments need to be from the bottom up, not the top down. So participation in municipalities and counties is extremely important in directing these investments, figuring out how to do it. We also want to help you in your transportation, because transportation infrastructure is critical in the climate change issue. And that's why I'm so committed to giving people public transportation options, which can reduce fossil fuel usage dramatically. We now have $70 billion of transportation infrastructure, 70% of which is public transportation in my state, when they can't build a birdhouse in Washington, D.C. So I'm very committed to infrastructure investment, which is very important to local communities as well. And congratulations on your first ever. That's a great step forward. By the way, I got to tell you, this has been my best trip to Reno ever. On my first trip to Reno, I was spring break my senior year, 1969. I drove to Reno with my buddy because we had his dad was a teacher and their car broke down and they couldn't find a part in Nevada. I don't know what the problem is in Nevada with parts. But we brought one. We drove all night to bring it here. We got here. It was the wrong part. And we had to drive right home. I was in Reno for about an hour. And that was my most recent trip to Reno. But I do want to say this. On that trip, I put a quarter in a slot machine. I won $7. In lifetime, I'm ahead $7. So thank you, Reno. I appreciate it. My brother, who's a big gamer, he's made up for that. So you see him a lot in Vegas.
So, Governor, thanks for coming to Reno again. You can't win if you don't play. So as an environmental scientist myself, I appreciate your attention to the global climate disruption. So that's why I want to ask you about healthcare. What does Medicare for All mean to you as a policy, and how will it raise our taxes?
So my belief is we start with a tenet that we want universal health care, and that that's a human right. We start with the tenet that we want to reduce inflation, both in medical services and in pharmaceuticals. And we start with the principle that we want to make investments in things that actually work, that bring health, not just additional procedures. What we've done in Washington State, I think, is somewhat a template for what I think we ought to do nationally. Number one, I'm the first governor, and we are the first state to adopt a public option for health care. And I'm proud of that, because I think it's a template for the next step forward for the United States. It's the first publicly sanctioned, available, universally available health care option. It is not the only thing we've done in the state of Washington, because we have a looming tsunami of retirements, and we have a dementia epidemic that faces us. So the other thing we have done is adopt the first long-term care program in the United States. It's financed so everyone will be able to age in dignity, because we don't believe you should have to go bankrupt when you're aging. So those are two important things. And the third thing we've done is to develop a new way to negotiate drug prices so we can reduce the rate of drug prices in pharmaceuticals. I think those three things are a template for the next steps forward. Now, what I believe is everybody ought to be able to be in the Medicare system who wants to be in the Medicare system, and finding a way to finance that, starting with repealing the Trump tax cut. Second, I think we've got to have new ways to negotiate drug prices. And I think the way we've done it is a good way to do it, including reimportation rights for countries that have negotiated these drug prices. Third, I believe that we have to have a new emphasis on mental health in the United States. And I think we've ignored mental health, somehow thinking that the brain isn't part of the body. So we have integrated mental health into physical health, because there's no reason they should be segregated, either in the way to pay for it or the way to get it. The fourth is, I believe we need to have new payment models so we buy value rather than volume. Historically, we have paid for volume in healthcare. We don't want volume, we want value, we want health. And we're doing some things now that are encouraging healthy living to move forward, and I think that's the way that we ought to go. So that's it in a snapshot, and I know we'll be talking a lot about it.
Yes. I've heard a lot about your great plans and your great proposals, but one of the things that I keep in my brain going back to is that lobbyists and Citizens versus United would prevent any of this from happening. Given our Supreme Court, given everything that's happening in the country in the past 4 years with the justices and all these things, how would you go about this? How would you go about undoing that?
Yeah, well, I want to give you a shot of optimism if I can. That's an important trait to have once in a while. Look, we are only one president and 2 senators away from doing the vast majority that I'm talking about. First, the president has enormous executive authority, particularly in the clean energy space, vast authority in clean fuels, in cleaner cars, and less coal in our grid, in changing how we use our public lands in a useful way. Huge executive authority, even if we did not take back the United States Senate. So I feel there's one president can do a lot in the United States, even if we don't take back the Senate. But if we take 2 more seats back in the Senate, so we can get these measures up to the vote, I believe we can do 95% of the things I'm talking about, because the American people are ready for this. They're ready for it. They're ready for change. change. They understand the power of job creation. So I'm actually optimistic about getting the vast majority of things I've talked to, half of it through executive authority and the other picking up a couple votes in the Senate. So I feel good about this. I feel good about beating Donald Trump. I believe we will be a unified party. I believe we will support our candidate. I'm certainly going to do that. Now, I know we're having some honest disagreements during these debates. And I just want to say that after we get done with all those disagreements, I want to be the candidate. I think I'm the strongest candidate. I think my message of climate change is vital to human civilization. I think I got the strongest argument to beat him on this economic message. And I have a really good way to take him on the debate stage. So I think I'm the strongest candidate to do that. But if there's some disaster and there's somebody else getting the nominee, I'll be there for them too.
So you always want to leave them wanting more. And I just wanted to say one thing myself, and I apologize if I didn't get to everybody, but I wanted to pick up on your question about how do we convince the people about the truth of this matter. And I think one thing important that needs to be said, what about a climate debate for the Democratic Party? We have our candidates committing to that. We need to make our party commit to that. We also need to make the mainstream media talk about this issue.
Thank you. So, as you know, I've been advocating for this. I think our party needs this. I think it's good for our party for a lot of reasons. One, I think all the candidates ought to be called up to come up and say what they're really bringing to this. Not just a 60-second soundbite that you want to get in the Paris Agreement. You're going to do something 50 years from now. Look, a Hallmark card to 2050 is not enough. We got to start doing stuff today. It's sort of like being in a marathon and saying, well, I'm going to be at the finish line by 2050. No, we got to start running today. And the way to find out whether candidates can do that or not is to have a climate debate. So this is really important. It's also important for us to brand the Democratic Party as the party that will actually tame this beast. So this is very important. There will be, I'm told, resolutions proposed in the third week in August at the National Executive Meeting to have a climate debate. And I hope you're supportive of that. I hope you can speak in favor of that. Or at least allow us to have a debate outside of the regime of the party without blacklisting us. So if you agree with as I do, I hope you'll actually urge that. I hope you'll help my campaign in a way that is appropriate. I hope that you'll continue to share your great ideas. I hope Indivisible will remain very, very energetic. It's been a boost for progressive policies in the future of this country. So early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and organize. Let's go get a new president. Thanks a lot.
Hey, everybody is thinking about it. Actually, I'd like to sit down. Here's what happens next. We're going to shuffle things around a little bit. So the picture taking is going to happen next. And you see my friend Christiane? If you can line up, starting with her, back against that wall. That'll be the order of taking the pictures.